Hello and welcome to this month's regular webinar. Extraordinary times, but we're still here, just about. We'll update on the picture so far around interim regulatory and assessment arrangements for functional skills during this session, but do bear in mind it's still an emerging picture and there will be lots more to say in the coming days and weeks as policy and regulatory decisions continue to be fleshed out. We also want to use this opportunity to remind you about the various channels of support from us that are still available. Catherine's currently on a short period of furlough leave, so it's just myself, Paul Seeney and Amanda Kelly with you this month.
And here's the customary bit of housekeeping before we delve into our main topics. The Maths and English Resource Hub is where you can find more information about this entire webinar series, along with various other bits of useful information. And if you haven't already signed up for our email alerts, yes, I know we say this every time, then please do. It's especially important right now given how much is going on. And if you are signed up, you might want to check which preferences you have selected to ensure that you have the relevant Maths and English categories ticked. In both cases, all you need to do is to click on the email updates link at the bottom of any City and Guilds webpage and follow the instructions.
And as always, 3 things you might have missed. Firstly, work is continuing on further sample assessments for functional skills. As we've said before, we've commissioned a total of 4 complete sets across both subject areas at both level 1 and level 2. We're almost there in the case of English reading and writing, whilst a 3rd set for maths is about to be uploaded. Mentioned this last month, but a new version of Evolve Centre Analytics went live at the beginning of March. It seems like an absolute age ago. Unlike the previous version, it can be used to assess performance data from functional skills paper exams in addition to those delivered on screen through the Evolve system. But to be really clear about that, it only includes the reformed functional skills qualifications, i.e. 4, 7, 4, 8, but the system does hold data on all exams taken since those qualifications went live last autumn. Another really important point to bear in mind about Centre Analytics is if your centre doesn't currently use the Evolve system for any on-screen exams, and that's any on-screen exams, not even if you don't use them for functional skills, you will need to complete a form requesting access to Centre Analytics, and that's available from the 4748 qualification page. We have had to step back from doing face-to-face networks, but we have been quietly reimagining these a little so they can take place as online meetings. We're going to be releasing a string of dates for these in the coming days, so watch this space. And just finally, we have set up a short series of online Teachmeets, bringing together maths and English tutors and managers to talk about how they've adapted their provision to current circumstances. We've already got some examples of great practice lined up for these, but we'd certainly welcome more.
So, not 1 but 2 main topics this time. The first one has felt like a roller coaster after the last few weeks, and it's still an emerging picture, but we will share what we can about what we know now. We'll also spend a little bit of time recapping on the range of resources available from City and Guilds to support maths and English teaching, including some of the new things we've developed specifically in response to the current situation.
Okay, brace yourself for the current state of play in relation to functional skills. It is still, as we've said, a moving picture, so do bear with us. In the last few weeks, we've announced a number of minor adjustments and clarifications to help those still in a position to carry out functional skills exams and assessments. There are no face-to-face exam audits taking place at the moment, and any EQA monitoring activity where it is happening, and in quite a few cases it still is being done remotely. We're also allowing a bit more flexibility than usual over exam scheduling and date time changes, which, as many of you will be aware, are somewhat tighter for the post-reform qualifications compared to the legacy ones. We've temporarily scrapped the exam change notification form that would normally be needed to tell us about any date or time changes, and we're now allowing bookings to be moved up to 10 working days either side. We've also confirmed that it is possible to carry out speaking, listening and communicating assessments remotely if the centre and learners have appropriate facilities for doing so. We've published some outline guidance for doing so. Inevitably, this doesn't cover every eventuality, but what it does try to do is outline some of the main practical considerations around how evidence needs to be captured and assessed. We are conscious people are feeling their way with this, so any feedback is most welcome and will help us refine the guidance that we're able to provide. One thing that's perhaps been lost a little in translation here is the point about that conducting discussions and talks, presentations remotely doesn't change any of the subject content statements that need to be met. The assessments themselves and the criteria that need to be met by candidates haven't changed. The forms still need to be completed and the IQA process still applies as normal. Now, if you've been following the education press over the last few weeks, you will have seen various things being said about remote invigilation and learners potentially being able to take on-screen functional skills exams at home. It is something that had been suggested even quite prior to the current circumstances. We are now moving ahead with a version of remote invigilation for various forms of apprenticeship endpoint assessments where these involve an online test. However, just to be very, very clear about this, when it comes to functional skills, there are quite a lot of other factors to consider and some more work to be done to make this really viable or scalable. And this is where the various discussions with Ofqual and the Department for Education come into play. Again, you may have seen that just before Easter, Gavin Williamson wrote to Ofqual asking them to develop a temporary new regulatory framework for certain vocational and technical qualifications. Unlike most of the qualifications covered by that letter, functional skills was mentioned directly, with a clear steer from the government that they are expecting learners to be given a calculated result rather than there be any significant changes to the assessment model or an enforced delay in assessments being available. We're currently working closely with the other functional skills awarding organisations and Ofqual to work through precisely what this means in practice, particularly the mechanics of how a calculated result might be determined. We'll obviously share these details as soon as we're able to. The other unresolved question for the moment is the possibility of an extension to the last certification date for legacy functional skills qualifications. Inevitably now this is wrapped up in the wider discussions about the use of calculated result, but again we'll confirm the situation once we know for sure. It is finally just worth pointing out that we are still offering functional skills exams at the moment, certainly on screen but also paper if centres are able to facilitate this, and we can still accept results for internal assessments. We're not currently issuing paper certificates, so if you are not all ready to set up to receive e-certificates from us, now might be a good time. And finally, any updates we provide will be shared in the first instance via our special COVID-19 web pages. You can see the link on this slide.
Moving away from England, there have been similar discussions taking place with the regulators and devolved administrations in Wales and Northern Ireland around the potential changes to their respective essential skills qualifications. In Wales, the picture is now becoming clearer following an announcement from Qualification Wales at the beginning of this week. This is favouring a calculated result for those learners due to complete in the near future. Again, there will be more to say about this once some of the final details have been worked through between the awarding bodies and Qualification Wales, and again the COVID-19 pages is where we will announce these first. Meanwhile, discussions are still taking place in Northern Ireland between the Department for Economy, SEA Regulation, the awarding organisations and other stakeholders about a way forward for essential skills. Again, calculated results is one of the possible solutions that has been mooted. The colleges, for example, are quite keen to see this used for at least some of their learners, although there's a recognition that that route won't necessarily suit everyone. Likewise, we will share more details once we are able to. Please do keep checking the COVID-19 pages, as that's where any further updates will appear first.
Turning attention to our bite-sized qualifications, especially the 3847 suite, but also the principles of 3844 qualifications, these have quite a different purpose from functional skills, and of course in the case of 3847 they are portfolio assessed. There will be decisions to come about possible changes to the regulatory position for these, and we'll advise once that's been confirmed via the COVID-19 pages. The ESOL qualifications, our ESOL qualifications likewise are being considered for regulatory changes, and again we'll announce these once we can. But in the meantime, what we have done for ESOL is publish some interim guidance to help illustrate how speaking and listening could be done remotely. And again, a bit like we were saying a moment ago with functional skills, it's about indicating how that could be done, not mandating that it must be done that way.
Some of the following are new and some not so new, but we thought it might be helpful to outline in one place a number of things that are available to support virtual maths and English delivery. We had planned, long before the current crisis, to make Smart Screen and e-functional skills the main focus of this month's webinar. No doubt that's something we'll revisit, but in the meantime we are seeing a renewed interest in both these products. Smart Screen, very briefly, contains a huge repository of maths and English learning materials. There are literally hundreds of videos, quizzes, revision guides and other resources. In themselves, the resources are not qualification specific. After all, reading is reading, and fractions and percentages are what they are, regardless of which qualification a learner might be working towards. However, alongside these materials are a set of resource guides and suggested schemes of work. These list each of the functional skills subject content statements, signposting all of the resources that might be relevant alongside some suggestions about how they may be used. E-functional skills, meanwhile, is a more holistic solution that takes learners on a journey towards a functional skills qualification, encompassing initial assessment, diagnostic, and a variety of targeted learning resources, as well as some tools to help prepare for assessment. It sits on the Hodder Dynamic Learning Platform, and we've worked very closely with Hodder, so there is a good synergy between the content and the look and feel of our assessments. So that's a quick summary of our teaching and learning resources. You can find a more substantial guide to both on the Maths and English Resource Hub. Another thing to draw your attention to is the Maths and English funding guides that we produced at the beginning of this year, and we covered these in the January webinar. There's one covering study programmes and one focusing on the adult education budget for England. It's worth noting that both the ESFA and the mayoral combined authorities have made a number of announcements recently about the operation of the adult education budget, so do check those out. Then there are a few more things that we're currently working on. We're just about to kick off another series of networks, broadly similar in format to the face-to-face ones, but a little more focused. These virtual networks will run throughout May and June, so look out for the booking details. And we've also been quietly working away on a series of what we're calling how-to presentations, which cover various aspects of functional skills and beyond. Smart Screen is one of the areas that we've earmarked for this as well. And finally, we're going to be facilitating a series of online Teachmeets over the next few weeks to give practitioners a platform to showcase ideas for virtual delivery. More about these in a moment.
Now, hopefully most of you will have heard about the publication of new national standards for digital skills in England. These will form the basis of a new category of essential digital skills qualifications that are due to become part of the adult education budget legal entitlement from this August. We are intending to develop a suite of EDS qualifications, and we are seeking views on what these might look like. Some of the parameters are set for us. For example, the qualifications will only cover entry 3 and level 1, but beyond that we would like to know what you think, and there's a link to the consultation from this slide. Whilst there's no government-led plan to revamp the ESOL qualifications, at least not yet, although do bear in mind the DfE is working on an ESOL strategy for England, we have ourselves decided to review our current ESOL Skills for Life suite of qualifications with a few ideas already in mind for this, but again we're really keen to hear your thoughts, and we will be releasing a survey shortly.
And here's a bigger plug for the Teachmeet sessions. These sessions will be focusing on remote delivery of maths and English without necessarily being qualification specific, so not just about functional skills. If you're not familiar with the concept of a Teachmeet, it's basically an informal forum, a bit like an unconference, where practitioners can share good practice, practical innovations and personal insights. They normally run as an open mic session where people can get up and do short input, so we'll be looking for volunteers willing to share a few ideas or things they've tried out. We're planning to facilitate 3 sessions in total, maybe more if it's a runaway success, but the first of these will be on Monday the 4th of May. We'll be adding a link to the Maths and English Resource Hub page so you can sign up from there. But we'd also love to hear from you if you're interested in having one of the slots. Use fsreform@cityandguilds.com to contact us. An important point, we are happy for participants to be anonymous if you're at all uncomfortable about letting on which organisation you're from. But the whole point of the session is for people to be candid about things they've tried, thought about doing, or difficulties they've encountered, for example.
Conscious that there are still so many unknowns about calculated results and all the other regulatory stuff that's happening in response to COVID-19, it's quite likely that we will slot in at least one more webinar ahead of the next scheduled one on Wednesday the 27th of May. If we do, we'll alert you as soon as the date and time has been set for this.
Which brings us to the close for this session. Thank you for listening, and bye for now.